This is the 46 of 46 podcast October sessions, where we'll talk all things spooky Adirondacks and more. From Bigfoot encounters on the NPT to ghostly sightings in the trees. We'll dive deep into the heart of these mountains and the people who dare to climb them. From Adirondack Bigfoots to haunted lakeside bark huts. It's all here on the 46 of 46 October sessions. Welcome back to the October sessions here on the 46 of 46 podcast. I hope you all enjoyed last week's third annual Bigfoot in the Blue Line episode with my guest Dave, who went through his own face-to-face encounter with a Sasquatch right here in the Adirondacks out in the Long Lake, Tupper Lake region. It is a fascinating story, and if you haven't given it a listen yet, you will not want to miss it. Don't you just love October, leaves, cool temperatures, and Bigfoot episodes on the 46 of 46 podcast? Speaking of which, I have yet another Adirondack-specific Bigfoot episode for you again this week. This week, I'll be speaking with Adam Hyde and Jake Hitchcock of Blueline Bigfoot. Adam and Jake are both Adirondack natives who have a YouTube channel where they investigate Bigfoot encounters themselves after experiencing their own nights of weirdness in the Adirondack wilderness, which led them on their search for answers. Is Bigfoot real? If not, what did they hear that night? Who threw those rocks at them? Their search for answers continues, and they're going to be right here to talk all about it on the podcast. So they're both with me tonight to talk Bigfoot inside the blue line of the Adirondack Park. Adam and Jake, welcome to the October sessions here on the 46 of 46 podcast, and thanks for coming on the show.
Well, it's a pleasure. Thanks for having us.
Hey, thanks for having us on, James.
Absolutely. I look forward to doing these ADK Bigfoot episodes all year, so I'm pretty excited to just talk shop with you guys on this subject in particular today. But before we get into it, let's get a little background on both of you guys. So you're from the Adirondacks, so where in the park did you guys grow up? And then eventually, what led you to this subject of Bigfoot? And we'll start with you, Adam.
Okay, great. Yeah, been living here my whole life. That would be 47 years of life here in the Adirondack Park. Grew up in North Creek, New York, which is, kind of central, south central Adirondacks. And, just kind of like a little redneck kid here, going to a small school in the Adirondack Park, as lots of the kids do in the park. And I would say, I don't know if I've always been a Bigfoot enthusiast. I would say that I probably thought maybe they existed, but didn't give it tons of thought. Up until, I would say, probably 8 years ago. I'm a painter by trade, a house painter, and I was painting a house not too far from where I grew up, over on Burns Road in North Creek. And it was around this time of year, actually. It was in October. I was finishing up the job. And during the evening, as it started to get darker, I would be, wrapping things up, trying to work as late as I could, because, it gets colder out. You got to get the jobs done. And towards the end of the job, I would notice that there was this noise coming from just inside the tree line. I'm up on a ladder, looking into the woods, and it sounded, to me at first, I thought it was a woodpecker, and it was just making this knocking noise. It was like, it sounded like a woodpecker, kind of. And it would repeat and repeat, and eventually I got to listening to it, and I was just like, this doesn't sound like a woodpecker. This sounds different. It almost sounded like somebody in there rattling around or something. It was loud. It seemed like every time this would happen, there'd be no one around besides me, which was kind of strange. And, as the rest of the week would go on, similar time of night, same thing would happen from the similar area, just inside the tree line. I'd be there, and I'd start hearing this noise like that. Just kind of like weird kind of wood knocking noises. I had no idea what wood knocking was in the Bigfoot world. People say that's this whole thing. I had no clue about any of that. I just knew that something was weird in the woods making this noise. And anyway, I didn't give a ton of thought to that. But then I wrapped the job up and ended up. I remember I was in my studio over on Burns Road that evening, doing a recording session, making some country music, which I like to do. And all of a sudden I heard this noise come over my headphones. I thought it was an anomaly within my computer system. Like maybe I had accidentally pushed a button and maybe a YouTube channel or some other video in the back screen started making a noise. I didn't know what this noise was. So I pushed stop on the recorder on the timeline, and all the music through the sound system stopped and my headphones stopped, but I could still hear the noise. And then it kind of droned away and faded away. And I just sat there with the headphones on. I'm just like, that was really weird. And I just sat there thinking for a second, and then it happened again. And I took the headphones off, and then I realized that it wasn't at all coming from my headphones or my computer or anything, but it was coming from outside. And I tell people that what it sounded like was like the same type of ramping up and long droning sound of like what you would hear from a noon whistle, but it had a lot more bass to it. It didn't sound like a whistle. It sounded like an organic something, some kind of creature. It sounded like it was coming from an animal, but it was like this type of thing that lasted, and it was long, this really long call type thing. And so there I am by myself, kind of like just after dark, I would say at this time of year. It was probably like around 8:30, and listening to this noise that I'd never heard before. Lifelong Adirondacker, never heard anything like it. And James, I'm telling you right now, this thing was so big, so voluminous, that the panes of glass in the single panes in this old barn where my recording studio was at the time, were vibrating. Because I got up out of my chair and I went to look kind of out the window, and as I'm like standing next to the window when this thing is making this call, I can hear the glass right in front of my face making these like pulsing, vibrating sound coming from the panes of glass because of the noise that this thing was making. I ran inside. I ran back to my computer, and I don't know, a little background of what some of the stuff me and Jake do. We're into video, audio, movie making, professionally and for ourselves, just for a hobby. We have a couple of different project studios. We have a lot of audio gear, all sorts of stuff to play with. And so I had a Tascam DR40 field recorder just sitting on my desk, as it usually is. Actually, I'm looking at it right now, to be honest with you. And I grabbed it, thinking I'm just going to go run outside and record this thing. And classic story. Go to hit record, and the lights wouldn't even turn on. And I emptied it out, got the batteries out, fished around for some batteries, threw them in there, turned it on. It was on for like a second, shut back off. I'm just panicking around it. This thing is now starting to make its third call, this third howling noise, as I'm running around scrambling, trying to find batteries, which is the oddest thing because I'm like a battery geek. I have batteries all over the place. Typically, I have, rechargeable batteries laying all over the place usually, as I'm looking at right now. Jake, am I looking at a lot of batteries?
There's 6 on the desk right here
Yeah.
in front of me.
So I always have batteries. For some strange reason, I can't find any. I ended up finding one of my DVD player remotes and slapping the batteries out of that and slapping them in there. And they had just enough juice. I ran outside and had the recorder going. I didn't catch one of those long, drawn-out howls. But I sat there for a while. I didn't make it. It was silent. It was dark. It was still, completely silent. And I'm just sitting there. My heart is beating. I can feel my heart and my pulse just like I'm trying not to breathe loud. I'm trying to just be still with this recorder pointed out towards the woods. And then shortly after, I was out there probably for maybe a minute or 2, 3 minutes. This noise which I did record, and I do have it. It sounded like a gorilla. It sounded like a mountain gorilla coming from up on the knoll, which you can see in the daytime. You can see the top of the knoll from where we were, which my guesstimation is about, being an avid golfer, I would say it's about 500 yards away, maybe 700 at the most. And it sounded like this, James. And it didn't sound like an owl, okay? It wasn't an owl that I heard. I know a barred owl sound like. This thing made this, it sounded like a gorilla. And that noise that it made like that, the audio, I didn't have an external microphone hooked up to my field recorder. I just had the internal mics. And I didn't have it set high enough to get a real good, interpretation of the noise. But when I was standing there in person, I mean, you could just feel this in my chest. Like this was like these 3 hoots and 2 hoots that it was doing were just like, I could just feel it right in my chest. Like this thing was big, really, really big, whatever this thing was. And I did that, and I'm just sitting there, and I want to run back inside, and I'm not. I'm just sitting there with my recorder in my hand, hoping to get another noise, and it just isn't. Nothing's happening. It did the thing. It did like the hoot thing probably like 2 or 3 times, and then nothing. And so I just sat there, and I was like, okay, I guess that's it. And I ran inside, locked the door behind me, and started to research online all these different sounds. Like Bigfoot was not on my mind in the least bit. So I looked up all these different sounds from the North American wildlife, everything that I could possibly think of, moose. Wolves, everything, anything, bucks, just all sorts of noises. And I'm just on the computer for like hours into the evening. It's like, it's getting like 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm still on the computer, just trying to look up all these sounds, going through all these YouTube things, these wildlife preserve channels, stuff with the DEC, all sorts of stuff. I can't find anything that sounds at all like it. And then this is a absolute true story. Then I go, well, maybe I'll just look up what Bigfoot sounds like after searching the internet for hours. And I do, and I'm not kidding you, the very first video on YouTube with a Bigfoot call sound on it sounded exactly, to me, exactly what it was. I can't find that video on YouTube anymore. I've looked all over the place. I can't find it. The closest thing I can find to it is some kind of noise somebody put up called the Ohio Howl or something. It's close. It sounds kind of like it, but it's the one that I heard the first time that I pulled up on YouTube. It sounded just like it. And I'm sitting there by myself, no one to share this experience with. My mind is blown. I have goosebumps. I'm excited, but more scared, and just I'm freaked out. And I'm like, this is unreal. What the heck is going on? And anyway, make a long story just short, I'll wrap it up. I did some more research into the Bigfoot. From then, I started researching some Bigfoot stuff, and came across the tree knock thing. Found out that that's one of the things that they're supposed to do, and that's when it made sense to me that just earlier on, I was hearing those tree knocks right down the road from there. And there's nothing in the way of where I heard that noise coming from and that job site. There's no roads or anything. It's all wilderness and swamp. And so I was putting 2 and 2 together. I'm thinking, okay, well, maybe for some reason that was a Bigfoot in the woods knocking on the tree. I don't know. Ever since that moment, I've been, I would say, a believer in it big time. And that was what really got me interested more than anything. That's what got me going and kind of like, okay, I need to find some more answers. That very experience.
Yeah, I mean that's a good amount of different different things that happen, and I find too from when I speak with people who've had their different encounters. In my mind, I mean, seeing it obviously would probably be the ultimate, but at the same time, when you hear things but you don't see it, it almost has like another creepier element to it and another bizarre element because you didn't get to see it, which therefore kind of makes you dig even deeper down the rabbit hole in the sense of like, what in the world was that? Because you only have one sense to go off of as you do your research, and then the rabbit hole gets deeper and deeper. Makes perfect sense though, and it's fascinating stuff, especially when you were at your studio and it was so big and powerful that the glass was shaking. Wild stuff.
It was one of those experiences that you go back and think about it, and it's just right there, the same thing every time, and you instantly are reliving it. Let me just tell you a follow-up to that.
Sure.
I was, so after that happened, I started to, after work, I would get home and I would set up my external microphones and get some real stuff happening out there with the, all my field of audio recording equipment on the porch. So I can really actually get some good recording going on there in hopes to get some of this stuff happening. And I did that off and on for about 2 weeks without any luck. Nothing came. But one night it was, and this was the last night I did this, it was about a week and a half later, I guess is what it was, of going out and setting up the recorder. I'm out there. It just gets dark. I got the recorder going, and I'm just sitting there. It's all quiet, totally quiet. And this smell wafts up onto the porch. It just caught my attention, grabbed my full attention instantly. And it was just like this, I don't know, it was this strange smell. It was not a very pleasant smell. It just wafted up on the porch, and then it was gone instantly. It was like I smelled it for a half a second, and then it was it. And I was just like sitting there thinking, that was weird. And then shortly after, I'd say within a minute probably, I had to get another whiff of it. And it was stronger, and it scared me. The smell, I've never been scared by a smell before, but this was the sense of whatever it was a scary smell. I don't know if it's like this primal pheromone thing or whatever it was that was putting off whatever it was. It scared me pretty bad. I grabbed my gear really quickly and ran inside and locked the door, and I was just there by myself, just sitting there kind of like, okay, well, what the heck's going on? It smelled to me like just rotten garbage, like really bad, rotten, awful, putrid garbage mixed with just really bad man BO. Like if you could picture somebody that just has been, not taking care of themselves for way too long.
Sounds like an awful smell from your description.
It was weird. That's the best way I can describe it. I mean, I can still picture the pungency of it. That's the best way I can describe it, but that doesn't even put justice to what it actually was. It was definitely weird. It had this just strange smell. All the hair went up on my arms instantly, and like I said, it frightened me, and I ran inside. And that was the last of sitting on the porch trying to get recordings.
Okay. So you didn't go back out after that smell? You didn't just go back out the next night? That was the end of it?
That was the end of it for me.
All right. Life in North Creeks. What's going on down there in North Creek? I love it. Jake, let's hear from you, brother. Take us a little bit about your background and how did you get into this whole fascinating subject of Bigfoot?
Jeez Louise, I was dragged in by this guy right here, but
okay.
I'm born and bred here as well, up here in the ADK. Adam, you were actually born in Lockport, right?
I'm not a native like you, but I was when I was 1 year old.
1 year old, all these up fronts. I was born in Glens Falls, like a lot of us, down at the hospital, and grew up in Dogtown. Baker's Mills, which is another hamlet in kind of Johnsburg, like North Creek. And, we both went to school at Johnsburg. I went to school with Adam's older brother, but in my senior years of high school, we were both in pop singers and media. So we've always been into creating stuff, like Adam said. So we were no stranger to a microphone or a video camera. And, I don't know if it was Bigfoot at first. I think it was maybe the paranormal that kind of got us looking around out here.
Mm-hmm.
Just because of all of the strange, unidentified lights and things in the sky that many locals report around here. So then I think maybe it was, the paranormal kind of drew us in, and Bigfoot, and he's been kind of hand in hand since then.
Okay. Well, let's don't leave us in the dark. Let's go right to that. So you mentioned, all the lights in the sky that the locals all talk about. Hit us. Tell us more about that. I mean, I live in Lake Placid. I don't hear much about that subject, but life's different down in North Creek. What are you talking about? And tell us some of those stories. Sounds awesome. I'm so intrigued.
I don't know if we have long enough, James.
Sure.
Back in the year 1998, coming from Lake Placid to North Creek, Adam and I at the time, we both were working for Bozzy's Pizzeria.
Of course, sure.
Bozzy. So they were open late until 3 o'clock, and then we would clean and make dough until 4:30, and then, So this was an earlier night, so I don't think we had to close, but we were on the road late, driving home, and I guess the short answer, we got followed by these strange lights that we could not identify, and they ended up driving themselves into the ground and then shattering into a bunch of shiny kind of like sparks and disappearing like those weeping willow fireworks you see on the 4th of July, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, there were like these orbs. See, Adam actually, he could tell that better on account. I was driving at the time asking him to check these lights out, man. It was wild. And just an unidentified, there's probably another one I was watching recently. The most recent is a light that has appeared in Olmstedville, Minerva area, where I now live. Oddly enough, right to the left-hand side of this mountain, that is a kind of a Bigfoot hotspot for us. 2 other locals have had incidents, one sighting and one some trail cam shenanigans, we'll say, and other things that you can check out in our Blueline Bigfoot's first season. I think there are a couple witnesses there, but anyway, this strange light was appearing, and I'd never seen the light before. I'm 51, and like Adam said, we've been around here. We've heard a lot of stuff already. But this was something weird, this light, and I walked around the pine tree to get a better look at it. And it was up by Snyder, and the light disappeared, or just went out. But it was brighter than a planet, and it wasn't moving like a plane or anything. But fast forward a couple weeks, I told my better half about it, and it was just after, early in the morning. I was just coming out of the shower, and I was, getting the coffee going in the morning. I looked to the right, and in the daytime, here's that shiny light, bright, pulsating, looking, just way out of place. I don't know how to describe it. And the missus was on the front step, having a cigarette, and I was right about to run over and tell her, that's the light. And, of course, the light disappeared again, broad daylight. But I was watching it, as it went out. I think before, when I walked around the pine tree, it had disappeared. I didn't see it disappear, So this time I was staring right at it, and it looked like it got sucked down a drain into a pinhole or something like that. Okay, jump into the winter of 2017 real quick. I was on my way to Adams from Olmstedville to his place there on Burns Road. He was actually getting a kerosene heater hooked up out at the studio, and another friend of ours, Lou, who's a retired plumber, like, you know, he knew how to hook up kerosene lines and stuff like that. So he was over helping Adam out. I was just coming over to meet him and hang out. So it was wintertime, only like 7:15, but still already dark, you know, and this huge light in the sky. It looked like a full moon, but it was about a third of the size of the full moon. And the moon was in a different part of the sky, you know, or, you know, it was different. It was weird. It was not right, and it looked like half a mile away from Adam's house, as you know, a crow flies looking down. And I'm driving right toward this thing, and as I'm getting closer, within the last few tenths of a mile, this other light drops out of the big light and starts heading up the hill toward Adam's house and toward the property. And as I'm coming up the last 100 yards of the driveway, I'm watching this light underneath the light. It looks like a batteries not included little squash can with a light coming out the bottom. I thought it might have been like Adam and Lou flying a drone or something, and I had just seen it, you know, or I didn't see it until after it, you know. So, you know, like a ninny, I'm waving up at this light, thinking I'm like, oh, it's just Adam and Lou. It has a drone out. Maybe he got a light hooked on to the bottom of it, and I'm just making, you know, there's got to be a reasonable explanation for this. Trying to debunk it and not think I'm going crazy. But I got up to the driveway, and the light was gone. And I pulled in, I went in the barn, and I asked those guys if they had seen this weird light that's out in the sky. And our friend Louie's like, oh, you saw that too? That's still out there? I saw that on the way down from North River, you know? Like I said. So we all went back outside and looked up at this white just ball orb in the sky, you know, for, you know, I don't know, like a couple 5 minutes in the cold, and walked back in. We checked in, you know, half an hour later. It wasn't there, but, you know, at the time, it wasn't. I guess we're not big cell phone people at the time, so it's not like we just whipped out a camera or even thought to do it. We know a lot of people who have come to us since we've started the BLB with encounter and or a lot of UFO stories, more UFO than. Mm-hmm. And corroborated UFO stories, like, well, with him and his wife, we'll say, they left their house and drove down the road to the field to get a better look at it and watched it for like 45 minutes. And 2 weeks later, his neighbor mentioned that he thought someone had left a Christmas tree on in his backyard at like 2 a.m, and then looked out, and there was a round ball with multicolored lights spinning around the middle of it, like floating, you know, a few hundred feet above, but lighting the whole backyard up like a Christmas tree, he said. But shining, sparkling lights in it, you know, freaked him out.
Sure. Yeah, I've actually heard of a number of stories from different people about orbs, you know, floating lights. Yeah, here in the woods, you know, mostly here in the high peaks. But yeah, that's just some crazy, wild stuff, and I love hearing those stories. Are so fascinating. I find the unknown and the weird to be super interesting. Now, tell me real quick about your drive that night from Lake Placid after you closed up shop at Bozzy's Pizza, and then we're driving home, and you said the light was like following you. Was this like an orb, like in line with the car, or was it something up in the sky?
Well, the thing about it is, so I'm in the passenger seat. Jake's driving. Jake says, Adam, can you just see if there's somebody behind us? And my answer was very quick. I said, yes. I looked in the side view mirror. It didn't seem like anything was behind us. I said, no. We drove a little bit further, maybe for another minute or two. And then Jake looks over to me and said, Adam, can you just turn around and see if there's something behind us? And I said, fine, Jake. And I took off my seatbelt and got it bent around and looked out the back of the hatchback. And the reason why I didn't see it in the side view mirror is because it was such a dim light. What I was looking for is I thought that he meant, is there someone behind us? Like, is there a car behind us? And it didn't look like the white lights of a car, and it was so dim it didn't really give off a lot of light enough to see it in the side view mirror. But when I looked out the hatchback and looked directly at this thing, what it was two perfectly round orange spheres about the size of basketballs, maybe larger, just maybe about anywhere between 6 inches and 1.5 feet off the road. They were equally spaced. They stayed exactly the same space from each other the entire time, as if they were connected together somehow, but there was nothing that would show that they were connected. And they put off a nice soft glow onto the road, where you could see the dotted lines, and you could see the cracks in the road and whatnot as it followed us. As soon as I saw this, I couldn't stop looking at it. I was just glued right to it. The pass from Cascade Lakes that goes from there down into, as you get into the bottom of the hill before you get into Keene, is where this all happened. It basically followed us the entire pass down that mountain, down through the winding roads down into Keene. Didn't quite get all the way to the bottom, but so it just, like, it moved perfectly behind us, like without any errors at all. It just kind of glided exactly perfect, following us the whole entire time. And then we went around one of those rather large turns and kind of swooped down around, and this thing decided it wasn't going to make that turn, but instead it kept a straight line, and it got lower and lower and lower, and just sunk right into the ground, right into the pavement. And as it did, all these orange sparks just came showering off of it, just making this big, huge splash of this orange sparky light. And that was it. And then I just, I was like, okay, it's not there anymore. I turned around, put my seatbelt on, and just looked forward. And from there, all the way to North Creek is about an hour and 10 minutes from that point to get home. Me and Jake didn't say a single thing to each other the entire ride. He drops me off at my house, and I look over at him, and it's like, what do you think that was? And he goes, I don't know. And I shut the door, and I said, I'll see you later. And we didn't talk. I mean, we didn't say one thing the whole ride home. It was chilling. It was a chilling experience.
Oh, it sounds like it would be. Like, at that point too, it's like, what do you even say? And I've heard, you hear that from people who have, Bigfoot encounters too. In fact, the person who did the, my Bigfoot in the Blueline episode last year was the same thing. After their encounter, as they got like chased out of the woods, they were dead ass silent on their drive, leaving the woods all the way home. What is there to even say in those situations? You're kind of in shock. You're in disbelief. You're wondering, did that happen? Did it not? But it did happen. And it's like, yeah, I can totally relate and understand that silent car ride. I'm sure it was a chilling experience. It obviously was. The story is quite interesting, especially as the lights went into the ground. Fascinating.
It was crazy. It was crazy. And the thing is, like, I've had a lot of strange, like, UFO encounters myself, most of the time, which are, I'm the only one who sees it. Or even if I'm in a group of people, I'm like the only one who catches it, or whatever it is. And I've seen some stuff that's kind of like unexplainable, and it makes you think, And but to have something that's just every bit as strange and undescribable and unknown happen with somebody else right there with you, to make sure that you're not crazy, that saw it completely exactly the same way you did, is just reassuring. Because once that happened, I was like, I was pretty sure that I was not crazy when I saw this other stuff happen, but now I absolutely believe all of it, because Jake was right there with me. This is just as nuts as any of the other stuff I saw, but Jake just happened to be there and happened to see it with me this time.
I find too that, the same kind of premise with so many Bigfoot encounters is when you have the same people saying the exact same story. It's like, well, it's hard to discredit what they're saying. They were there, we weren't, and that this is what happened. And when people know exactly what they saw and what happened, in my mind at that point, that's as good of information as I need to know. And I feel whether it's Bigfoots or UFOs or whatever, once you unlock the possibility and the door to, this subject can happen, but the world tells us this is not true and this isn't true, it doesn't happen. Once you unlock that door, well, suddenly everything is possible. Anything is possible. I don't write off anything. Any weirdness that happens, I say, yeah, that could certainly happen. The world is a wild place, and we definitely don't know everything about it. So I find that interesting. It's really neat that you guys had that, that orb experience, because there's so often in so many different Bigfoot stories and Bigfoot encounters, orbs tend to be seen right along with Bigfoot, or oftentimes right before people have Bigfoot encounters. Now, you guys obviously have a YouTube channel called Blueline Bigfoot. So take us through a little bit about that and about what you guys do on the channel. And then I want to get into what your guys' thoughts are with the kind of correlation with orbs and Bigfoots. But first, take us through what your YouTube channel is and tell us a little bit about that.
Well, the first reason why we wanted to get the YouTube channel together was, like Jake was starting to say, we were interested in paranormal just before we decided to make it almost exclusive Bigfoot thing. And then when the Bigfoot thing kind of happened to me with the call and the noises, we just kind of went all into the Bigfoot. And started doing our own research online, as a lot of the people do that have encounters and experiences, or just want to learn more. Where do you go? You go to the internet. So we started looking up all sorts of different things about Bigfoot, whatnot, and we decided that we were going to have a fun little project together, and we might as well, we're videographers, we have project studios, and we do that type of stuff. Let's make a little show, and let's make it fun, because, you get into the research part of Bigfoot, and you find that there's a lot of people that are very opinionated and very serious, and there's a lot of mean people in the Bigfoot research community.
What's the problem?
And that's what we found. And we decided to make a lighter side of Bigfoot research. We wanted to make a YouTube channel that had a lot of serious aspects to it, but had a lot of comedy in it. It was supposed to be fun to watch. Still to this day, I still laugh at the stupid stuff we do.
That's great. You got to keep it fun. Yeah,
so we wanted to get something together so we could not only, try to maybe find more answers, but it would give us a reason that we would have to hang out more together, just to keep, just having fun together is something. Me and Jake have been lifelong friends. He's my brother, and this is just another fun thing to do with one another, and you create something, and hopefully make other people laugh, and maybe find answers as you go. And then locals start hearing that you're doing this stuff in the Adirondack Park, and all of a sudden you're getting phone calls from one person, and then a phone call from another person, and then, hey, did you hear about Barb right around the corner from you? She saw Bigfoot. And we're like, no way. And then what about this guy? This guy has a picture of Bigfoot, and this guy has footprints of Bigfoot, and this guy right around the corner from where you grew up saw Bigfoot cross the road just 2 weeks ago. And all this stuff comes once people know that you're into it, and they understand that you're not going to laugh at them.
Mm-hmm. It's a safe place to talk about it, yeah.
Yeah, they just all of a sudden come out of the woodwork and start telling you what's going on. And we've been lucky and fortunate enough to have these people want to be on our channel. We had one of the eyewitness videos we did with a friend of ours, Barb Hotess, was pretty crazy. She saw Bigfoot right in her backyard. A lot of people laughed at her. A lot of the locals laughed at her, and still continue to laugh at her. But it's not. It's not. I don't think it's very funny. She doesn't think it's very funny. Mm-hmm. She's a dead sober lady. She doesn't do any drugs or alcohol. She's completely got her act together. She's a great person.
And she won't use her property anymore.
She can't. Yeah, she used to use. She has all these nature trails behind her house that she used to use, and now she doesn't. She's too afraid to go in there and actually,
sure.
venture on it.
See, I mean, right there, like to me, that is enough information to know this woman saw something that was so alarming to her that she will no longer go into the woods on her own property, no less. You can't really say, "Oh, she's making that up. She didn't see something." Well, if she saw enough to no longer use her own property, and what you're saying, of her as a person, I mean, that's enough information in my mind to know she knows what she saw, and she saw something, and something is out there that they tell us is not out there. Just another example of how I find this subject to be. I feel like at this point it's so easy to show how honest and truthful the subject is, and someone like Barb, like, she didn't ask to see this. She didn't request or hope to have this encounter. I'm sure if you were to ask her, she would love to have be able to go back in time and, go out for dinner that night and not be home to experience that, given that how it's clearly affected her life.
Yep.
100%.
And one of the things when we got into it, this is after I had the smell that I smelled, my scent encounter. So I was really interested in finding out that part of it. So I did ask her during that. I was like, "Did you smell anything when you were out here?" And this is like, I didn't really have a lot to go by as far as research goes, besides my own experience. I wasn't like just taking this information from what other people said. I was kind of going with my own experience. "Did you smell anything, Barb?" And she said, "Yes, it smelled like rotten garbage. It smelled like really rotten garbage." I was like,
well, there you go.
I was like, holy cow. It was nuts. I was like, whoa, that's exactly what I smelled.
Sure.
It was just crazy. And this is, this is years ago when we did this. So, but yeah, you hear that stuff all the time now. The topic's kind of blowing up and everything.
Mm-hmm. And this is still, that story was down in that North Creek area where you guys live?
Yeah, we live right here. I mean, this is all in the ADK down here. And, it's like, the wilderness area is anywhere from North Creek, Baker's Mills, Johnsburg area, all the way up over into like Hoffman, over near Scroon Lake. If anybody knows where these areas up in Newcomb, they basically border the bottom area of the High Peaks Wilderness. So it's basically where we're at. We're kind of more in the foothills, Gore Mountain, if anybody knows Gore Mountain.
Oh yeah.
And so that's where we are. And a lot of this stuff, we have the hotspot areas, which are over in between, like Gore Mountain and Scroon Lake is a really good way to look at it as the crow flies. If you take a line from Gore right to Scroon Lake, you're a little bit over halfway. Boom. Right in there is a paranormal hotspot. UFOs.
Okay. Interesting.
UFOs happen all the time. People see orbs up on Snyder Mountain all the time. Noises are reported. Eyewitnesses. Stuff that happens on trail cams. Little people, James. Little people.
Yeah, sure. As I said before, nothing is out of the equation for being out there, and I've heard stories of little people as well. Not here in the park, but fascinating that you have. I've heard them from on other podcasts, but yeah, nothing is out of the realm of possibilities in my mind.
Yeah. So yeah, like I was saying, there's this area that we research in that has there's just a lot of strange things happen in one area, and it always makes us wonder. There's like, is what they say the veil thinner in this area? Is it are there more energies kind of slipping in and out of different planes or different dimensions in this one area for some reason? It's who knows? We don't know, but there's way more activity in this one area than there is here. That stuff doesn't happen often like that.
Sure.
Over here in the North Creek area.
Yeah, a lot of people I talked to about, talked about Bigfoot here in the ADK. We all joke that the reason, like, if I was a Bigfoot, I wouldn't be in the High Peaks. I'd be outside of the High Peaks because it's a lot easier life and it's a lot more remote, actually, than within the High Peaks wilderness. So it's not surprising that tends to be the hot spot for these sorts of things. And I'm really actually pretty stoked to hear that when you guys started doing this, more and more people started coming forward to you and telling their stories and telling their encounters, because, as someone who does this podcast, I have found it is hard to find people. They're pretty tight-lipped, at least up where I am, or the people I've spoken to just won't. No one will talk about it. But and I even remember maybe like, this was probably like 5 or 6 years ago. I was just so fascinated by this whole subject, especially here in the park, from hearing a story, and then I put one of those, one of those ads where you put the email address on the bottom and you put a whole bunch of them and you just kind of put little rips in it so someone can just rip it off so they have the email address. And I put these flyers up at the local Stewarts in Saranac Lake and both of them in Lake Placid about like, have you experienced anything weird in the Adirondack woods, Bigfoot, UFOs, etc.? Shoot me an email. I'd love to just talk with you. And I put that up hoping like, oh, this could be cool. This will like, stir some fun conversation and just like chat with people about these weird things that happen. And I kid you not, the very next day they were taken down off of Stewart's it's like the local bulletin board that they have at Stewart's, and clearly the employees took them down or someone took them down because I don't know. I didn't mean anything, joking with it. I was dead serious. But people are tight-lipped about this sort of thing, so it's pretty neat to hear that.
Sorry to interrupt. Maybe it's a Stewart's thing. They did the same thing to ours.
Oh, good to know. Good to know.
Yeah. I know exactly what it looked like. Jake had a picture of like the Bigfoot. He drew it by hand, and we did the same thing. We had the same experience.
Yeah.
All right. Well, maybe it is a Stewart's thing. Man, their milkshakes are good, but their Bigfoot policy has got to change.
It's got to change.
I don't think we're changing. But if I wasn't lactose intolerant, boy, I'd have a milkshake.
Sure. So you guys have, you've obviously heard from, various people here in the Adirondacks who have had Bigfoot encounters. You guys talk about this and you have interviews with people on your YouTube channel. Is there one story in particular you mind telling that comes to the top of your head that's, kind of an interesting Bigfoot story? I know you kind of went into the woman Barb's story a little bit. She saw it in her backyard. Are there any other stories you want to share with the listeners here?
Well, one story that is not on our channel that we've been waiting to get film of and actually make a recording, an episode, happened over in that area we were talking about in our so-called hotspot area. A friend of ours lives over there, way back in the middle of nowhere. There's hardly anything back there. When the power goes out back there, it doesn't come back on for like a week. Anyway, he randomly after golfing one day, he said, "Why don't you come inside? I have some pictures in here on my laptop. I want you to take a look at." And there was a wolf in the area that they were worried about because they had a little baby dog at the time, a little puppy, and they wanted to make sure that nothing was going to happen to the puppy. So he went out and a couple different locations, set up some trail cameras. And this one trail camera was off facing out into the middle of this field. Pretty big field. I'd say it's probably like not huge, 8 acres worth of mowed grass. And then there's the tree line, and all of a sudden Green Mountains right there. This big, beautiful mountain. And so the trail cam is kind of more towards the road, facing out towards the fields. And you look on the picture, and there's 5 lights in a row, in a line, horizontal line, evenly spaced apart. And you look at it, it's way out in the distance. It's way out at the edge of the field. And then the next picture, boom, it's right up next to the camera. I don't know how close to the camera it is, but it's way closer, and you can obviously see these things are the same exact distance apart, and this thing is big by comparison. It looked to be, I haven't seen the picture in a while, but it looked to be probably about like 70 feet wide from one light to the other light, at least that wide, with more lights in the middle, all evenly spaced, that just showed up on his trail camera out in the middle of nowhere. And this guy he's like, "What do you think of this? I'm kind of like, I'm spooked by this stuff." And we were talking to him. We're like, "Okay, I don't know." And I start telling him, some of my UFO encounter stories. He's talking to us about, that we're doing the Bigfoot thing. And then he gets on to telling us that he took his little puppy. He would take it for exercise walks after work, and sometimes put her in the car and drive up the road or back up the other side of Minerva Hill onto the railroad tracks and walk up in there because it's nice and peaceful, nothing going on in there, no cars that could hit her. And so he's walking along. Maybe he got about a quarter mile off the road with the little dog down the railroad tracks, and out of nowhere, something pushes a tree. Just, it's totally quiet. He said the dog stopped and wouldn't move, and then this tree comes crashing down out of nowhere off the side bank and lands in front of them over across the railroad tracks. And they sit there, and the dog won't move. And James is freaked out, but James is a very practical guy. He doesn't think that, he's like, okay, that's just, weird. Trees fall.
Mm-hmm.
So they sit there for a little while. They step over the log, right? And they continue to walk. And it's not more than 3 minutes longer. The dog doesn't move again, and it happens again right immediately after.
Wow.
Another big tree, probably bigger than the first one, comes crashing down and slams over the railroad tracks. And James was like, the guy's name is James too. Maybe I shouldn't be saying that. I was trying not to in the beginning there. Anyway, his name's James. I can give you a social security number anytime you want it. So he picks up the dog and doesn't walk her back. Picks up the little dog, who's a big dog now, and just kind of tails it out, beats feet, boom, back to the truck, and gets out of there. And the way he tells the story, I mean, he was, his eyes are like huge, like he's telling you the story, and you're like, that he's not making this up. And that to me was just another one of the many crazy and scary things that we think are probably Bigfoot
Sure.
here. There's lots of them though. I mean, there's lots of, none of them besides Barb. Barb had the eyewitness account. And then there's another gentleman that lives over here next to Squatch, what we call Squatch Country, which is a big parcel of land in between two roads. There's nothing in the middle. It's just all wilderness.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a camp up there, just a primitive camp. There's no buildings or anything, but we have a campground up there we made on my land. And this guy saw Bigfoot cross the road on the road that borders that piece of property just early in the morning. It was a little bit later than this in the year, and he's a hunter. He's a deer hunter, so every morning that he doesn't have to work or before work, he goes out and he kind of takes a nice crisp fall morning walk down the road, looking for sign, just kind of checking things out in the woods, seeing if there's any deer around. He was doing that. Then he heard this loud dong, metallic dong, and he's like, oh, it's probably just the guardrail heating up in the morning, as they do sometimes. They make pops and some strange noises with the heat, cooling and warming, whatnot. But then he just kind of walked the corner just a little bit, and he saw the last bit of it. What he thinks it was is this thing kind of like hitting its foot on the guardrail or something. But he said he saw the last two strides of it as it finished crossing the road. He said it was probably a little over 7 feet tall. He said the shoulders were probably as it turned a little bit toward him. He said the shoulders are really, really broad, and just the thickness of the profile of this thing, he said, was really girthy from side to side, like from its stomach or its chest to its back was really thick. He said the thing was massive. It must have weighed a ton. It was really big. Totally covered with hair, really dark hair. He didn't know if it was black or dark brown. It was too far away for him to tell. And it left one impression in the shoulder stone before it took the last stride off the road. And he said, look, it's right here. I actually got a picture of it on my phone. And then he showed me the footprint, and then he described to me where he saw it in detail. And I'm from this area. I mean, I know this place really well, where he's talking about. I mean, it's right on the other side of my property. So I'm like, okay, cool. I'm going to go look for it right now. But there had been a rainstorm like the day before, so it wasn't as fresh. It was like 2 days or 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went to the spot and I found the track. It was a big track. It was like 13 inches long, 13, 14 inches long, and it was a nice foot impression in the side of the shoulder stone, deep, and you could tell it got rained down and everything, but it was a footprint, just like you said it was. And I tried stomping around in that area to see if I could make a footprint in that area, and I couldn't. I couldn't even hardly do anything. I couldn't even hardly make my boot go into the until the shoulder stone there, hardly at all, which was just, I don't know.
Yeah,
that was
wild.
Yeah, and he's been a believer ever since then. Now he has like some plywood cutouts of Bigfoot out next to his house. Every time I run into him, he asks me, "Have you guys seen anything? How's it going?" It changed his life. It completely changed his life.
Yeah. I would start there if you're ever looking for Bigfoot. Mm-hmm. People might have had a sighting because a couple of the people, it's not uncommon to get those big cutouts. Like that might be the clue.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good
Maybe
point.
You're not just a fan. You're an experiencer or someone who knows. And once you see or hear something, you don't have to be told by anyone else. It's nice to have someone else there with you, take the pressure off. But I don't have to be told, or I don't need to, I guess, validate it more, or seek someone else's approval. I already know what time it is.
No, that's great. And yeah, that's a very, very good point. Those are some awesome stories. As just a fan of the subject and this park, I was fascinated hearing them. So real quick, as we start to close it up, because we've been talking about an hour now, so we got to wrap this up. I'm going to have you guys back on again for next year's October sessions, because I'm sure in the next year you'll have a ton more stories to tell. This has been awesome. So in closing, real quick, Bigfoot, do you feel that this is a flesh and blood creature? Do you think it's more paranormal? Do you think it's more maybe alien related, maybe a mix? There's a lot of theories out there. You guys have experienced your own, things with the orbs, UFOs, Bigfoot. What are both of your opinions on what Bigfoot is? And obviously there's no wrong answer. We don't actually know, but what are your opinions?
Well, geez, I think while we still find creatures on Earth that we didn't know were there and still find new species, I think there's too much information and too many sightings around for it to be something natural. Got to be something. It's got some kind of unknown element to it. I think maybe supernatural, maybe alien, who knows? But I think there's something we're missing. Yeah, I think orbs. Definitely related.
Sure.
I am more apt to think that it is something to do with the creation of all existence and some kind of unknown part of why everything that's alive and exists is here and everywhere else. I think it's just one of those things that, if it was flesh and blood and it was just this thing out there, we would have this thing in a museum stuffed somewhere, a big statue of Bigfoot somewhere. Mm-hmm. And that's just how I think. I think, well, of course we would. So there's something else to it. Definitely paranormal. Definitely has some kind of powers of some sort. I have no clue. Really don't know, but they're there, or else we would have in a museum. It's not the government. It's not a government cover-up. That's what I feel about it.
Yeah, no, those are all valid answers. And, as far as the government goes, it doesn't behoove them to tell us anything more or to say that, yes, these are out there. There's no benefit to it. So it's not surprising that it is still a subject very much kept in the dark. But this has been awesome. Where can people find you guys online? Where can they watch your content? Give a plug for all of your platforms.
Okay, great. The platform that we try to use exclusively is the YouTube channel, Blueline Bigfoot. Originally, it was Blueline Bigfoot, 3 words. It got shrunk down to Blueline Bigfoot, 2 words on YouTube. You need to get a hold of us, email us, bluelinebigfoot@gmail.com.
Well, that'll be a great place to wrap up this very fascinating episode of the October sessions right here on the 46 of 46 podcast. Bigfoot. It is a subject that just fascinates me in a major way ever since I was probably in middle school, and it's something I'll always enjoy talking about. Whether you believe or not, it is an interesting subject, especially here in the Adirondacks, and the deeper you dig, the easier it is to believe. But at the same time, the deeper you dig, the more you realize, man, you know what? Maybe we just don't know anything about this world. So it is a rabbit hole, but it's fun stuff. But anyways, thanks for listening to these unique, fun, and spooky October episodes right here on the 46 of 46 podcast. Big thanks to Adam and Jake from Blueline Bigfoot for coming on to talk about Bigfoot and UFOs. Check out their YouTube channel, Blueline Bigfoot, and check back next week for more October fun right here on the 46 of 46 podcast. Remember to always leave no trace, do the rock walk, and if you carry it in, carry it out. See you on the trails, everybody.